So we are looking at sell or process further. Sell or process further. So this is another aspect of application of relevant costing. So you are using marginal costing technique. You know your marginal cost is same thing as your marginal cost is the same as the relevant cost. So we are saying, how do you apply your marginal cost in deciding whether to sell or process further? So there are some products that are jointly demanded, or jointly produced. So what means for you to produce one, you need to produce the other before you can produce one. A good example is, for you to produce kerosene, you need to produce crude oil. You know, crude oil is used to produce fuel, kerosene, diesel, so and other lubricants. So let's say you produce crude oil. So the issue here now is that you ask yourself, should I sell at crude oil level, or should I go further and produce diesel or fuel and sell at that level? So your decision rule on this, that is, what should guide you? What is the rule that should guide you? First of all, you consider your incremental revenue and your incremental profit, incremental cost rather. We use the word incremental, meaning that if I sell at kerosene level after producing crude oil, and I go further to produce kerosene. Let me use kerosene this time. Kerosene. So when you produce kerosene, you will have also a revenue. So let me just use a little illustration. From here to here, you produce crude. From this point of producing this crude, all the costs incurred here, we call them joint costs. The costs incurred here are all called joint costs. Note that these joint costs are not relevant. They are not relevant in taking the decision whether to sell or process further. So we're saying you produce crude. At this point, you cannot decide to say, let me produce fuel, produce diesel, or even produce lubricants. Or even produce kerosene and sell. There are many other things that can be produced from crude oil. At this place is what you call split-off points. Split-off points. So this split-off points, that is the point where you now diversify and produce other things from the first product produced. So we are saying, should we sell at crude oil level or move further to produce kerosene? So let me just use one illustration, a simple illustration. Let's say we produce crude, and from there we can produce lubricants. So at this point where you produce crude, from here where you decide to move, it says split off. So by the time you're producing this, let's say when you produce crude, you can sell your crude for 100 naira. So, and you now find out that if I produce crude, if I reproduce it much more, refine it further again, I can produce lubricant and sell at 150. So you can see, this is more revenue for you. So there is an increase in revenue what you call incremental revenue, 50. This incremental revenue. However, what if you decide to, if you looking at this, you say, this is better for us. There's an incremental revenue added to the 100 naira. So which means we are making more 50 added to the 100. But what if we consider that for you to produce this kerosene, there is additional cost? This is now what we call incremental cost. So let's say this incremental cost of 70. So by the time I consider my incremental cost of 70, I'll find out that it's even a loss of 20, which means the incremental revenue is lower rather than the incremental cost. So it will not be wise for me to sell at lubricant level. It's better I sell at crude oil. So this is just what we are talking about. So we will quickly just solve a question to buttress this. You don't need to stress yourself much. All you need to know is this decision rule, because it is the decision rule that guides your decision, whether to process further or to sell at the split off point. Also note that every cost incurred at the point of producing the crude oil or the first stage, we call them joint costs because they apply to all the second product produced. So we call them joint costs. So whether you take decision to produce further or not, they are still incurred already. So that's why they say they are not relevant. So if we let's look at a question to buttress our point here. Okay, we have this question here. Kofu company manufactured 3 products at a joint cost of 600,000 naira. These products were processed further and sold as follows. So they are processed further into XYZ. So he produced a joint product which was later processed further into XYZ and were sold at sales. Please, this sales is under the 400, 300, 700, 300. And the additional cost we are told is 100, 320, 120. So this is what it is. So if we go by this, we can now understand. And they said further, if the company had pursued its opportunity to sell at split off directly to other processors, sales would have been 250,000 for X, 400,000 for Y, 100,000 for Z. That if they are to sell at split off point before even producing further. The company expects to operate at the same level of production and sales in the forthcoming year. Consider all available information and assume that all costs incurred after split off are variable. Required: which products should be processed further and which should be sold at split off point? So let's look at the two. Let's look at the 3 products. Solution. X, Y, Z. So we are saying, decision rule says, what is your incremental? Please let me get a space. Pardon me to shift this so that I can have some space. So first of all, we have the Kofu company. consideration of sell or process further. So we look at what is our incremental revenue here. First of all, sale at split off is what? Or let's say, first of all, let's look at this, the final sale level, because this we usually believe that is where that is where the cost we expect the sales to be more. So it says sales at further processing. So we have X, Y, and Z. We have 400,000, 700, 300. Then sale at split off. They told us to sell at split off is 250,000, 400,000, okay, 400,000, then finally 100,000. $150, 300,000, 200. So this is your incremental revenue. Then we look at our incremental cost. We are told 100,000 will be incurred to process further here, 320, and 130. So there is an incremental benefit here. Let's put incremental benefit to clause. Here we say is 50,000, 20,000 loss, then 70. So what this means is that for this one, we should process further. Sell at split off. Process further. So what it means is that we should process further X and Z, and Y we should sell at split off. Don't need to process further because we're making a loss. Hope this drives the knowledge on this. This is quite easy. So if you have any question, you can share, you can ask in the comment section.